Good afternoon, everyone. I'm actually going to make a start without the Chief Exec. Let's rebel. We'll get started without him. So we can all get away again in this horrible weather. Right. Apologies for absence. Mr. White, please.
Thank you, Leader. Good afternoon. We've got an apology for absence for this meeting from Councillor Mott. Thank you, Leader.
Right. Item 2, declarations of interest. We all know the rules. Items requiring urgent attention. I have none. Is anybody aware of any that I should know about? No? Wonderful. Confirmation of minutes. The minutes held on the 2nd of December. Pages 1 to 6 of your agenda. So if we go through, so page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, page 5. Is everybody happy to note those minutes? Do I need a seconder? Am I noting? Or?
Happy to second.
Thank you. All those in favour then, please.
That's carried for approval of the minutes. Thank you, Leader.
Very much. Public questions, we have none. Well, not that I'm aware of. Just add that bit suddenly. Right, and at this point, I would like to welcome 2 young people to our meeting today. We have Taryn Vale, thank you Taryn, and Jay Miller. Hi. These 2 young people are apprentices that work with Mrs. Hotchkiss in Revs and Bends. And they're coming to learn about us today, so hopefully we'll all be on our best behaviour. And I didn't introduce you at the very start because now we're getting to the nitty-gritty of things. So you'll now hear us start to talk about the budgets and things like that going forward for the year. So welcome, and I hope it's not too boring. I will be honest. Council meetings aren't everybody's thing. Right, so if we can go to the Hub Committee Forward Plan, so 7 to 12. I know we can't speak for Councillor Mott in her absence. I don't know how much she's got on this agenda. We've got today's meeting, so then we go to the 3rd of March. So the council plan will be coming forward to the 3rd of March, and I think it's next week that all of you are going to come and talk to the Chief Exec and myself about what's within your plan, where you're going, what you would like to see delivered before we are defunct, and those sorts of things. So I'm looking forward to seeing everybody, and I'm sure the Chief Exec is as well. So hopefully you'll all have met with your lead officers and you will come with a plan. So that's the next big thing. Then we have the revenue budget, the capital programme, the write-offs, Crisis and Resilience Fund. So Councillor Edmonds has got quite a few, and then Councillor Elliott. Then we have land and parish disposals policy, which we're introducing for consideration for as we go forward with LGR. We have the Local Authority Housing Fund, the LAF4 round report that will come forward. We have a waste contract update, investment in community sports facilities, statement of community involvement review, update and adoption, and the Council's biodiversity report. Oh my goodness. We have Tamar Valley National Landscapes, the World Heritage Site Plan Management Plan, and insurance contract. All I can say is I need you all to be very prepared, otherwise we'll be here for a day and a week and everything else looking at that list. So I think you're all going to be extremely busy being prepared for the next meeting. If any of you know of anything where reports need to drop off that list and be moved or whatever, it would be great to know. So then there's some for the April meeting, but not much. and we'll go forward from there. So has anybody got any comments to make on that little list? Well, long list, it's not little. No, right, that's good. So if we can now move to page 13, the month 7 revenue budget monitoring report, which is Councillor Edmonds, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. At month 7, the end of October 25, the Council is forecasting an overall underspend or surplus of £80,000 or 0.9% of the approved net revenue budget of £8.8 million. The table of key budget variances tells us that investment income is significantly higher than budgeted, reflecting interest rates remaining higher for longer than previously forecast. Planning income continues to perform well, but remains a volatile and demand-led income stream. Car parking income is slightly ahead of target. Looking at the cost and income variations, homelessness and temporary accommodation costs remain the most significant pressure, reflecting the ongoing housing crisis, limited accommodation supply and increased nightly accommodation costs. This mirrors the national picture. ICT support contracts are under pressure due to inflationary price increases and additional licensing and equipment cost. Recycler income is lower than budgeted due to market conditions. Employment states are experiencing income shortfalls, partially offset by running cost savings. Business rates pooling is forecast to underperform, reflecting wider changes to the system ahead of the baseline reset. Management actions are in place for the income and expenditure variations, and where appropriate, these actions have been reflected in the draft 2026-27 budget proposals. So finally, the Council's reserve position is summarised in the report, and the report recommendation is to note the forecast income and expenditure variations and the projected underspend. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Edmonds. That was extremely well presented. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions, Councillor Edmonds, please? Well, you've done a good job. Oh, Councillor West.
Sorry, Mr. Councillor Edmonds. No, it was just purely, in previous discussions, we talked about homelessness, and I was requesting whether we have any way of knowing how much we've saved as a result of our great work we've done on providing through the LAFIS fund, accommodation and that. I'm just wondering if that's been actioned yet or whether that is still possible to be doing.
I haven't got an exact figure. My colleagues may have, but I think I seem to recall at a previous meeting there was a figure per unit, a saving per unit of maybe £15,000 per annum. I don't know if Councillor Renders has perhaps got a more up to date or.
No, you're correct in what you're saying. Between 15 and 20 on average that we would normally save on that one.
And I believe those units are.
Yes,
fully let.
Yes, they are
doing what we want them to do. So.
And there was a mention in the by the leader there just on stuff that's forthcoming with LAF4 again, which will go into that as well. So yeah.
My question was really, it's an opportunity for us as a council to be able to show to the public in terms of the investment we put into our temporary accommodation, that how much money that would have saved over a period of time for us. And to put that figure in the public, out into public, may be a good thing.
The Chief Exec, please?
Can I make so each time the council's considered a LAF proposal, that's been included within the specific feasibility for that scheme. But given that we are bringing a report forward in due course on LAF4, as well as doing the feasibility, I think we can probably do a review back in terms of the efficiency of the spend previously. I think that'll help inform the decision, actually.
I would appreciate that, because it'd be really good to actually shout what we've done and how we've helped in this situation. Thank you.
Everyone happy? That's good. Any other questions then, please? No? Right. Councillor Edmonds, would you like to talk through your recommendation, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So I'll move the recommendation, which is on the screen and obviously on your agenda papers, which I think is just to note the forecast income and expenditure variations.
Thank you. I'm happy to second. Does anybody have any debate, please? No, Jane. Councillor Elliott.
Thank you. So this just feels like a good moment to compliment the team that have kept such a tight eye on this budget. It is really good that we're so close to our target budget. That seems completely appropriate. So I really wanted to know our thanks for that. But also, going back to the sort of question about homelessness, it really is striking that if it wasn't for the competence in Treasury management, that the amount of money that we're spending on temporary accommodation would really put our sort of balanced budget in jeopardy. And it's really useful on page 16 that you've got those figures year by year for the last 4 years, and to see how that is climbing and what a large percentage really that is of our total budget. You know, when you think it's just a relatively few people who are needing that temporary accommodation. So I think that really just underlines the importance of housing being one of our key priorities in this council, and not just thinking about how we spend money on temporary accommodation that we own so that we're paying less at a sort of commercial rate, but also how we prevent people from becoming homeless in the first place. So I just wanted to draw attention to that, because otherwise, because it's such a clear presentation and things are on an even keel, I think we can gloss over something that really is an issue. Thank you.
Councillor Elliott, I think you've hit the nail on the head with the work that we do in prevention, but also the management of Treasury management, which is one of my big passions, as Mrs Henstock and Mrs Buckle know, that really is key. Now, I know of many councils in this country that are truly struggling with homelessness, and their budgets are being absolutely decimated by the costs of providing it. I can think of one straight away, Epsom and Ewell. There's a few around that corridor of Surrey, Berkshire, etc., where the costs are just truly outrageous. And it can take up to almost 80% of what you spend after wages and everything, after the salary costs, etc. The 80% of a budget is going on that. And we are very, very lucky that A, we don't have the numbers, but B, in how we manage that situation and how we also manage our money to help pay for the costs that are coming. Would you like to add more?
Yeah, so thank you, Councillor Redder, for the point you make. I mean, I think what's really important to me is this council made strategic choices about engaging with the LAF programme. It saw the opportunity of doing the right thing in terms of providing accommodation for much needed accommodation, and also the value in revenue terms and financial management of that. We're doing the right thing in terms of housing. It's resulting in a positive impact in terms of our revenue budget. And to be quite honest, if the council had a lot more resource, it would be good to invest a lot more in housing. So it makes good sense. It's a clear priority, and I'm very proud of the way the council has adopted that strategy, because I think it's a good route forward. And may the government continue to offer LAF funding, because every time they do, we should be taking it.
Councillor Edmonds, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I think the Chief Executive has just covered what I was going to say, done it in a much better way than I could. But I think it's right to reflect the success of the team and the housing team in the LAF funding. But for me, I guess the bigger question is, what else can we do? What else should we be considering? Sadly, the housing crisis is not going to go away anytime soon. So that's the question that really interests me. Yes, by all means, give thanks for the success that's been achieved. But the big question for me, what else is there perhaps we can do? LAF 4 and anything else that perhaps we might be able to consider not just the financial impact, but also the impact on people who are sadly faced with the prospect of homelessness.
No, it's fine. I think it's all been said.
Could I just ask all to see all in favour, please?
That's clearly noted. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. If we could go to page 23 of your agendas, please, on the Capital Programme Monitoring Report 25-26. Councillor Edmonds, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Well, this report provides an update on the capital programme, showing the position as at the end of October 25. The capital programme continues to be well managed and within the budgets previously approved by the Council. By the end of October 25, the capital spend is 6.7 million, which represents 37% of the 18.1 million capital budget profiled for this financial year. That level of spend is broadly in line with expectations at this point in the year and reflects the natural phasing of major capital projects where expenditure increases as we move through the delivery stages. The largest element of the programme relates to the Oakhampton Interchange Railway Transport Hub. The capital budget for the station has been increased by 3.2 million, fully funded through Section 106 contributions held by Devon County Council. This reflects revised cost estimates provided in 2025, which take account of current market conditions and the fact that original estimates were prepared during the COVID period. As at the end of October 25, 8.8 million has been spent on the scheme across 3 financial years. The station is currently anticipated to be brought into service in May 26. The Council continues to make progress in delivering its housing-related capital programme supported by the Local Authority Housing Fund. In total, the Council has now secured 1.75 million of government grant funding, supporting the acquisition of 13 properties, helping to address housing need and reduce reliance on more costly temporary accommodation. Delivery of the Council's capital programme is progressing as planned, with no current budgetary concerns identified. Full details of the capital programme are set out in Appendix A, and the report recommendation is to note the contents of the report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds, for a very positive report for all of us to know that our spending and our capital projects are going ahead and staying to budget. Does anybody have any questions, please? No? Right. You're happy to propose your motion?
Yes, I'm very happy to move the recommendation, which again is to ask members to note the contents of the report.
Thank you. I'm happy to second. Any debate from anybody? I don't know whose hand went up first. Councillor Edmonds and then Councillor Jury, please.
Debate, sorry, I was in the wrong place.
He was keenly trying to vote in favour before anybody said anything.
I tried to stifle debate, probably.
Thank you, Councillor Evans, and the team for these very interesting and figures and the thoroughness, as usual, with which this subject is dealt with. I think I just really wanted to comment that it's very easy for us sometimes to get really wrapped up in the revenue budget. But I suppose the really important part of what we do probably is this capital budget. And if you look at the spread of things that is in there, there are so many really good projects that are taking place and being advanced and being pushed forward by the council and by the officers of the council. And I just wanted to note that and thank everybody for what they've done. I think if we went back a number of years and thought we would be looking with the financial problems we had at the time, at the spread and range of things that we are currently doing to improve the lives of people who live in West Devon in accordance with our plan. I think it's really pleasing, and everybody should welcome that and get a big pat on the back, I think. So I just really wanted to make that point.
Thank you, Councillor Jury. Councillor Renders, please.
I was just going to praise again, to be fair, and Councillor Jury said a lot of what I was going to say. We covered a lot of it in the first paper as well about the laugh spending and that, but well presented, easy to read, and yeah, big pat on the back, I think, for this one.
Thank you very much, and thank you, Mrs. Buckle and your team, for all the hard work that goes into this. Thank you. Could I ask to see all those in favour, please? Thank you
That's
very
unanimous
much.
for noting. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you. Right, now we move to me and the meat. I think we've just done the starters, so now we're on the main course of the agenda for today, which is the budget setting process. As you can see, there are 11 recommendations with this report, which goes fully through our budget and our medium-term financial strategy. We have different appendixes set out with where we are, cost pressures, etc. Particularly going forward, we need to pay attention to those for what they're going to be in year 27, 28, but particularly 28, 29, when hopefully we're not actually here. Because I don't think we could manage that cost pressure. So I will hand over to Mrs. Buckle, whether Mrs. Henstock's joining her, I don't know, but I will hand over to the two ladies to take us through step by step. I just would like to say, Mrs. Buckle, thank you very much for the presentation that you gave to all members recently on the budget, so most people are completely appraised of this budget. There should be nothing new in it that will jump out and say, hey, look at me, I'm hiding on page 147. So thank you to that. But actually, a bigger thank you to members. I was really impressed with the number that attended that presentation. I can't remember if it was 21 or 23 attended, and that was a really high figure. So thank you all very much for giving your time to such an important issue for this council. Mrs. Buckle, please.
Thank you, Leader. So yes, this report sets out the council's budget proposals for next year, 2026-27. You can see in the executive summary there, we've got cost pressures for next year totalling just over 1.6 million, and the amount of savings which have already been identified, again, just under 600,000. Members will be aware that the government have carried out a funding review for the next 3 financial years, so we have received a multi-year settlement from government. That's the first time in a decade when we have had more than 1 year's financial figures from government at a time. The government call it a fair funding review, but I think it's fair to say that for us as a district council and a rural authority that is sparsely populated, it hasn't been very fair. We can see that Shire district councils are the worst category impacted by this funding review from central government. And it does mean that we will see a reduction in our government funding of over 7.5% by the time we get to 28-29, and that's equivalent to 276,000 per annum reduction in government funding. We have responded to the government's consultation on the finance settlement. We have also sent a copy of our consultation response to our MPs. And we've received an email from government thanking us for our consultation response. What will happen now is that the government will consider those consultation responses from local authorities, and the final finance settlement will be laid in Parliament, probably early or in the middle of February. Analysis has been carried out by the Rural Services Network of the impact of that funding review. What you can see from that analysis is that the most urban councils will actually receive 41% more head of population in government funding than most rural councils. So I think that's quite telling. On page 33, that shows we would have a balanced budget proposed for next year. Obviously, that's a legal duty to set a balanced budget. In 27-28, we are predicting that budget gap will be around about 546,000. And projecting forward to 28-29, the budget gap would be around 1.1 million, a significant budget gap. Though, as the leader said, the current timetable for local government reorganisation is such that the Borough Council would cease on the 31st of March 2028. So we have shown 28-29 for modelling and illustration purposes, and we'll continue to show the impact. There was a meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee on the 20th of January to seek the committee's views on the content of these draft budget proposals, and a copy of the minutes from that meeting have been circulated to members in advance of today's Hub Committee meeting. Moving forward, on page 35, you can see there how Shire districts are impacted by the new funding formula. 1.2% is the average change in core spending power, and that 1.2% would include an assumption that Shire district councils will increase their council tax by 2.99% or £5. That is an inbuilt assumption within the government's figures of core spending power. And you can see at the top of that page there, the blue bar, you can see the government funding reducing from 3.69 million down to 3.42 million. And there is an inbuilt assumption in the orange bar that council tax will increase by 2.99%. Over on page 37, we're aware that the business rate baseline reset will happen for next year, 26-27. So that does mean it's not financially advantageous for us to be part of the Devon business rate pool anymore, and all of the 11 councils in Devon will be recommending to come out of the pool for next year. Just to say that we've done really well by being in that pool since 2013. We've made pooling gains of around about 200,000 per annum from being part of the business rate pool, and that is something we will look at annually. On the next page, on page 38, you can see the revenue support grant there, and you take the government's fair funding assessment figures, deduct your baseline, and that gives you the amount that the government are saying that they will give to the Borough Council in revenue support grant. You can see that that is significantly decreasing over time. So it goes from 2 million down to 1.789 million. It obviously takes no impact of the fact that our costs are increasing, particularly around things like inflation. So there is no government funding for that. And you can see there that even the business rate baseline is more or less flatlining. In terms of our budget proposals and cost pressures, there is a proposal within this report that we continue to support economic development activities. There's a cost pressure there for 200,000, so that we continue with the programme of business support and business advice. As the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, that's government funding, would cease in this year. In terms of savings, on page 39, one of the things that has helped the budget for next year is the triennial pension revaluation, and we have been able to reduce our contributions into that fund as the fund has performed well. And we would also be looking to increase our income targets around treasury management and planning, and building the DEFRA grant that we receive for extended producer responsibility, building that into our base budget. On page 41, around council tax, that just shows an average council tax bill for the Borough Council. You can see West Devon's element of an average bill is £269.41. A recommendation to increase that by 2.99%. that would be an increase of £8.05, and that would mean that the Band D for the Borough Council would increase to £277.46, and a 1% increase in council tax equates to about £60,000 for the Borough Council. Moving forward in section 6, you can see the council plan there. We will be considering a report on the council plan as part of the hub agenda in March. And in terms of reserves modelling, again, when the budget proposals come before full council in February, we will carry out, as we always do, a financial risk assessment basis and sensitivity analysis around reserve levels. But I feel our reserve levels are at a prudent level. And again, that's something that when we have our external audit by Bishop Fleming of the accounts annually, they will also look at things like reserve levels. In section 9, on page 44 and 45, we're setting out the capital project bids for next year, and those total 561,000. And we have just got on page 46 the time frame that the budget proposals would come forward. So we've got the full council meeting on the 17th of February. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Buckle. Does any member have any questions for Mrs. Buckle, please? Councillor West.
I think we're all aware, as was mentioned earlier, when we're discussing the impact of the interest we get off loans and that, and the superb work that's gone into that. Have you in your mind any predictions where you think that's going, bearing in mind that there is a want by the Bank of England to actually reduce the interest rates? Have you got any clear predictions about that in your own mind, Lisa?
Yes, so the council does engage a treasury management advisor, and we've got treasury management training for all members coming up in February. But we do receive from our treasury management advisors predictions of where base rates are going. Not only base rates, but PWLB borrowing rates as well. So we use those in working out what we think the budget will be for next year. So we have built in that base rates will decrease to 3.5% by the summer. That's where we think they will go, and then flatlining after that. So in terms of our budget there, I think it's shown on page 40. We would be recommending a budget for next year of 1.1 million. Currently, we are achieving about 1.3 million in income, but obviously base rates are a bit higher, or they were higher in 25-26.
Could I ask one more question, Chair? Sorry. Having been in education where we used to have 3-year budgets going forward, and that they are great because that gives you an indicative thing. But as already been stated, the risk is around inflation. Has the government got any provision in it in going forward in terms of if there's a sudden spike in inflation or that to help us? Are you aware of anything like that, or is that it basically?
Yeah, we don't get any funding to compensate us for the impacts of inflation. In fact, what we can see from the new funding model is actually our funding is significantly decreasing, by over £300,000 over the next couple of financial years. So there's no extra funding for that. There's no extra funding for things like temporary accommodation. We've got more demand on our services. No, we don't receive any government funding for that.
So no safety nets then?
No, unfortunately not.
Thank you.
We will try not to walk the tightrope. We will try not to walk the tightrope because we'll be falling off it and there's no safety net. So we're not going to go down that route. Does anyone else have any questions, please? No? I would like to move the budget proposals as set out on the screen. They go from number 1 to 11. I do not propose to read them all out, but the one I will read out is number 1. That is to increase council tax for the year 26-27 by 2.99%. This would increase the Band D council tax for 26-27 from £269.41 to £277.46, an increase of £8.05 per year, or £15 or 15 pence per week, as set out in 5.5 of the report. May I have a seconder, please?
Happy to second.
Thank you. Does anyone have any more questions? Oh, no, sorry, we're moving to debate. I've done the questions. Councillor Edmonds, please.
Thank you, Chair. Well, I'd like to congratulate Lisa and the team for the way that they've presented the budget proposals. I think Lisa is able to, probably talks in her sleep with quoting this stuff. I'm sure she does. So well done to the whole team, but also in presenting another balanced budget for next year. And despite the fair funding review, and I think it's quite an achievement, and especially when you consider that we'll continue to invest in our council plan for the benefit of our communities and businesses, and we're also committing a further 200,000 to supporting our local businesses. So I think that's a really good effort, and again, thanks to members for getting fully engaged in this process, and that's very encouraging, and hopefully all these plans will be delivered, I'm sure, as we move through next year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Edmonds. Councillor Moody, please.
Thank you, Leader. I would just like to say thank you to the team. Every year, we know we're in safe hands, and I think that is so important that we know. And sometimes I think you have a little magic drawer somewhere that you pull out some funding from. But no, thank you, Lisa and the team. I think you've done a great job, and long may it continue until 2028. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jury, please.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to pick up on a couple of points that have been made both by Mrs Buckle and by Councillor Edmonds. Clearly, the funding picture is difficult, and I think one of the things that was really beneficial a couple of years ago was when the council received UK Shared Prosperity funding, and the good works that the council has been able to do with that. For the first time, it really gave us some income and some leverage to do some really amazing locally focused projects, and the project team of a number of disparate partners has been working really hard on delivering on those projects under the auspices of the economy team. It therefore has been disappointing that the government has removed that funding and diverted it elsewhere to strategic mayoral authorities, of which of course the South West doesn't yet have one. But I'm so pleased and so thankful to everybody on the planning side that we have included in our budget the capacity for the economy team to continue that really good work. So I think it's really it says something again about this council, we said before, that we have found the way of continuing that work and continuing to support our small businesses and farmers at a time when they are absolutely in need of it. So I really appreciate that inclusion in the budget.
Thank you for that, Councillor Jury. I have to say, when I was asked, it was a complete no-brainer that we supported it, and I wanted it kept there so we could keep that department that does do a lot of good for this council. From what I understand, on a national level, the government are looking into an alternative version, and something may be said when the final figures are given out. I have to say, after conversations with certain members of the SLT in this room, I'm delighted to see the inverted commas around fair. May I ask you all, if there's nobody else who wishes to speak, to Councillor Elliott.
Sorry, I just wanted to make a brief point, because I think members of the public who might be watching this might be surprised that we're not having a bigger debate about why we're putting the council tax up our maximum, which is 2.99%. And I think it was very much embedded in what Mrs Buckle said, but people might have missed that that really the government's figures that only show a very tiny increase in our core spending power over the next few years is assuming that we put the council tax up by 2.99%. So you could argue that our hand is being forced, that the only way that we can keep on an even keel is to put up council tax by that much, even though everyone around this table is very aware of the pressures on people's purses, on people's household economies. And it was striking as well in the Oversight and Scrutiny Committee that people completely accepted that. There was not a big debate because we really have no wriggle room, if I can put it like that. We really need to put it up by 2.99%. And of course, that's only our portion of the council tax. A large part of what people are paying for at the moment is spent by county. And the other thing that I think is just worth noting in public is that parishes and towns have in a way more autonomy than we do as West Devon Borough Council. And I know in certain parts of the borough, parish councils and town councils are being really imaginative about raising their precept, which is a very small proportion of council tax, but at a local level means that people can do really interesting things and really creative things to support people across their communities. So I think it's always just worth us dwelling a little bit on that sort of council tax aspect. Thank you very much.
I think it's very true that the government do expect you to put it up. Mrs. Buckle has stressed for 23 years that I've listened to budgets, that you have to, because if you go behind and you say you're going to reduce it, your next year's budget, you never ever catch up. And the government know that, and frankly, I don't think they care. And I'd written on my notes to say actually exactly the same as you, but I'd forgotten to say it, that the government do expect it now. There's no choice. Before, many years ago, we did have a choice, didn't we, Mrs. Buckle, whether you put it up, didn't go to the maximum, because we never liked going to the maximum. But now you have no choice. And I think you've addressed that point very well. Thank you, Councillor Elliott. Right, Councillor West.
It'll be brief, Chair, I hope. I would just like to reiterate exactly what Councillor Elliott and other members have said about this. My biggest concern is, being relatively new to political life and that, is how over the years, the last 20, 30 years, we in the South West have suffered from a complete lack of disregard for our conditions and what we're living in terms of rural depopulation, rural deprivation, transport links, you name it. We, to some extent, have become the, I'll use the term kick, whatever, for governments in terms of saving money. Now, I've worked throughout my whole life in inner city areas, and they need the cash. There's no two ways about it. However, we also need this funding, and in some cases even more so because of where we are. And we talk about the extra £200,000 going in, well, not extra, but to maintain the economic group. I think that is vitally important, because without that, we won't have the job necessary, we won't have the infrastructure to enable us to survive as a community. So I'm very grateful for everything everybody's done. I'm really pleased about the fact we've gone, well, pleased not the right word, but we've gone from 80,000 to 120,000 for the second homes tax, which we're going to put into housing. So there are some negatives there, but actually due to the hard work that's gone on, there's been some positives as well in what we're trying to do. So long may it continue while this council is still in place. Thank you, Chair.
I'd just like to add slightly to what you've just said there. Having been a school governor in very difficult times in a local school here, we always used to talk about fairer funding, that Devon was always, we were usually on the bottom or one up from the bottom. I think they're fourth off the bottom now for funding. And it actually, the bit you hit the nail on the head with is it does cost more. And last week I listened to the schools minister giving a presentation, and I was desperate to ask the question, rural areas don't get as much, specifically they were talking about SEND, and rural areas do not get as much funding for education. So we don't get it for SEND either. But actually, for us to be able to deliver on that, it costs us even more. And I don't think the government understand that bit, that actually you think you're giving this pot of money, and that this pot of money is worth, okay, we'll be really silly and say £20 per pupil. But actually here, it could be 25 because you've got to get to that pupil and they've got to get to you. And recently we were asked about the 16 to 24 age group, why youth are not in work. And I had to read this really long report last night to give comments somewhat, and I've asked them to strengthen what they're saying about rural areas, because when you get one bus a week, as we heard about for Bratton Clovelly last week at the planning meeting, you know, a young person cannot get to work, they cannot get to the apprenticeship, they cannot access things that are there. So where do they get experience for work? There's no paper rounds, there's no going out on the milk float, and, you know, all those sort of really basic things, working in a Saturday shop, in the hairdressers or wherever, it doesn't exist anymore. So people aren't employing people because they've got no experience. They don't know how to get up in the morning and come to work every day. So it's made life very, very difficult. And for us, it's even harder because that funding is less. And I'm now going to get really political. I've said no child asks to be born, but every child deserves the right to an equal education across the whole country. And I really strongly believe that, and that she would have got that because that's my hobby horse, that, you know, fighting for young people. And I think it's wrong. And that's what happens with the funding here. Because, for example, many years ago, we did do some funding with the schools on occasion to help support them with projects or whatever. We can't do any of that. But they can't either. And when you see the teachers buying the notebooks and the pencils and things like that out of their own salaries, that's wrong. Sorry, I'm going to stop now. Councillor Moody.
I'll just say one comment on that. Coaches, forgetting. I know, we were paying £150 for a coach just before I retired, and that was working within Plymouth. If you're trying to go from a rural school into a town, you're talking £200-300, and if you're talking a school of only 60 pupils, you just can't do it. You really can't do it, and that is depriving those children of experiences they should be able to have. Sorry, Chair.
Thank you, Leader. I think you've hit the nail on the head, and Lisa has alluded to it as well, as the lack of rurality factor for the funding. I think just for those people at home who are watching, or other people who aren't quite aware, is that West Devon is 365 square miles. And there's only 55,000 people who live here. So for providing services, it is so much more expensive. But not only is it the young children, it's the elderly. We have a high population of older people, and providing services every single service we provide costs more money. If you were in London, 55,000 people would fit in one block of, one small area of central London. So your waste collections, everything that is provided by this council is just stretched and stretched and stretched. But anyway, their end of the lesson. Thank you.
Thank you. Right. May I ask to see all those in favour, please?
That's unanimous for the recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
I hope the government were listening to the debate. Right, if we can move on to item 10 of the budget, please. And Mrs. Hotchkiss is coming forward. The business rates discretionary rate relief policy. Councillor Edmonds, are you introducing?
I am indeed, Chair. Thank you. So this report asks the committee to approve an updated discretionary rate relief policy alongside the implementation of new government-led business rate support measures coming into effect from April 2026. As members will be aware, we are seeing some of the most significant changes to the business rate system for many years, following the Chancellor's announcements at the November budget. These include a national revaluation of non-domestic properties, new business rates multipliers, and a package of reliefs designed to support businesses through changes to their bills. The purpose of this report is to ensure that West Devon has the right policy framework in place to administer those changes fairly, lawfully, and consistently, and to ensure we can pass on government-funded support to those who are entitled to it. Where government has required councils to deliver these schemes, the council will be reimbursed for the costs, and Mrs Hotchkiss and her team are already undertaking significant preparatory work to ensure bills are issued correctly and communication with ratepayers is clear. Effective communication is a key factor in helping businesses to manage and understand the changes to their bills. A supporting small business scheme is to be introduced, which will cap annual bill increases for businesses losing certain reliefs, like small business rates relief or rural rate relief. Other measures include an extension of the small business rates relief grace period. That's been extended, so if a business expands into a second property, it can keep its relief for 3 years instead of 1. And the introduction of EV charging point relief, 100% business rates relief for 10 years on eligible EV charging points and EV-only forecourts, the adoption of a refreshed discretionary rate relief policy, the implementation of the 2026 Supporting Small Business Relief Scheme, and confirmation of our intention to introduce electric vehicle charging point relief once national guidance is finalised. These measures will help protect smaller businesses, particularly within the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors, while also supporting our wider climate ambitions.
Thank you very much for that. Would you like to add anything, Mrs Hotchkiss?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, if I could. The government have just made an announcement about a further relief this afternoon. So they've announced further relief for pubs and live music venues of 15% on top of the measures announced at the budget. Obviously, as ever, the devil's in the detail, but we'll just need to work up what that means and just ensure that we can give that additional support to that sector as well.
Very hot off the press. And really good news, because the pubs and hospitality live music venues have been really, really struggling, and so many people are just giving up because of the costs. On the train last week, I had somebody questioning me about business rates, and I had to say to them, because they think it's local councils, we don't set the business rates. And I had to really emphasise that we collect it, and that's the hard part, because you automatically get the blame because you collect it. And, you know, for anybody listening and for our apprentices in the room, I'm afraid that's the government that sets that, and I'm sure Mrs Hotchkiss will be explaining it to you. But yes, that is really important. Unfortunately, there's not a great deal we can do. We can work within our discretionary rate relief, and we do give as much as we possibly can to people who apply where it is appropriate. So any questions, please? No? Okay. Who's Councillor Edmonds?
Yeah, I move the 4 recommendations are on the screen and on page 85 of the agenda papers.
I'm happy to second that. Would anybody like to add anything in debate, please? Councillor West.
Well, I'm really pleased in this, in the sense that this 100% rate relief for EV charging points, and that I think is a good way to encourage that. We know we're just going to be placing some within our own premises, which is great, but they are still quite limited within the area and they still need to expand, and that will fall to private individuals and companies probably to be able to do that. My biggest concern, it's one we've talked about before in the chamber, is around the lack of infrastructure to allow these opportunities to go forward, in the sense that we have not necessarily got the grid to enable us to rapidly expand or provide these facilities necessarily to the level that's needed. For instance, within our own plan, we're having to put money in to provide, you know, over £100,000 just to enable us to be able to have these charging points, particularly the rapid charging point within our parking area here at Kilworthy. So my concern, as always with this, is that we know that until the national grid can get up to speed and be delivering in Devon, particularly in West Devon and the peninsula, we are going to be restricted what we're going to be able to achieve, both as a council, both as industry, plus us as individuals within our own homes, in terms of wanting to have electric vehicles and having appropriate charging points for them with that convenience. So I welcome it, but I just wish the government would put more funding necessary into the national grid to enable us to make the best opportunities from these initiatives. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor West. Would anybody else like? Councillor Jury, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just like to say, I really welcome this report and the clarity that it brings. I have already had a number of conversations with businesses in Tavistock who are really worried that they've kind of looked at what their new rateable value is going to be and don't really have much other information and are already starting to panic about the fact that they are falling out of small business rate relief, for example. So having some clarity on this, and will be working with the Tavistock Chamber and the bids in both places to try and get some of that information out to businesses as well, and for them to know that they can come and ask those organisations for a bit of help and support if needed, in terms of finding out exactly how the changes are going to affect them, because some people are getting a bit worried about it already but don't have the full facts. So I appreciate the clarity that this brings. Thank you.
Just on that point, Councillor Jory, Mrs Hotchkiss, have you started to get many calls with regard to this?
It's been fairly limited so far, to be honest. We are working with comms to put together sort of probably a more structured comms plan than we would do normally for this. So I think once we start pushing that, particularly on social media, we would expect an uptick from the business community contacting us. But it's been quite limited to date.
So are we going to have a good section on our website under the businesses and things like that, so people can access the information and particularly the policy and how that goes forward? So that is there that people can look at, because we can't expect Councillor Jury to be the brains for everybody on this.
Yeah, we back when the first announcement was made back in November, we kind of updated the website thereafter. But it kind of feels now is a time for a bit of a refresh, and just to make sure that we do have sufficient people on hand to deal with any queries that we do get over the coming weeks.
So we'll have a Q&A and things like that on there, frequently asked questions, etc.
Yep, we will do that.
Does anybody else wish to say anything? No, if we could go to a vote then, could all those recommendations 1 to 4 up on the screen and on your papers, all those in favour?
That's unanimous for the 4 recommendations. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mrs Hotchkiss, for coming up. Right, moving on to item agenda 11, health and community wellbeing. Councillor Elliott, this is a safeguarding policy. Mrs Blake, would you like to come forward, please? Mrs Blake is our head of housing and designated safeguarding lead, and I know that Councillor Elliott and Mrs Blake have been working very hard on getting this policy right. There's been rewrites and all sorts that I've been reading about. So I know that this has really thoroughly been entered into, and some of the declaration recommendations are what I have been asking for a very, very long time. and I am truly delighted to see it as a second recommendation on this report. Councillor Elliott, please.
Thank you very much, Leader. So, as you've underlined, this is a really important paper. I think sometimes when we've got the word policy, it seems a bit dry and boring, but of course this is a safeguarding policy. This is about the most vulnerable people in our communities, and this is all about people and caring for people, which is why it's so important that we get it right. So in very simple terms, we're asking Hub to adopt the updated safeguarding policy, and I'll say a little bit more about that in a moment. The other thing that is perhaps the newest thing here is that we want to introduce a voluntary DBS check. And I'm just going to be very pedantic and say we need to just change the wording of number 2 here, because it's not a voluntary introduction, it's the introduction of a voluntary disclosure and barring service check. So just to give a little bit of background about the safeguarding policy itself. So the original policy was adopted back in November 2020. And this has been reviewed every year, but also it was subject to audit in March 2024. And we got reasonable assurance. But this is something we really want to pay attention to. And so, as the Leader has said, there's been considerable work done on this. And I'm really pleased that we're part of the Devon District Safeguarding Officer Network. So there's a lot of learning that goes on across Devon, and broader than that, of course, as well, in terms of looking at best practice. And so I think it's also important and very honest to say that the policy you've got in front of you is very much modelled on best practice from East Devon, who have put a lot of thought into how to design a policy. There are some policies online which are 60-odd pages long, and what we've deliberately tried to do is to keep this policy brief. And there's a very important appendix to it. So it's only 9 pages long. There's an appendix which really spells out the sort of line of command and who's responsible for what, so that the intention is for this to be a very user-friendly document that people can use in a practical way. So that's a little bit about the safeguarding policy itself. And just to finish those thoughts, I think it's important for all of us as members to really note Section 5.3.3, which makes it clear what elected councillors are responsible for, and how important it is for us to undergo training on safeguarding so that we understand how to spot the signs of neglect and abuse out in the community when we come across it, and so that we know how best to respond to that in a sensitive and appropriate way. But the other element of this is introducing a voluntary DBS check. Now, people are often very confused about DBS checks. It doesn't help that the initials have changed a number of times over the years. But for me, this is very much at the sort of core of like the Nolan principles of public life, which are all about transparency. Yeah, so one of the 7 principles, Nolan principles, is about transparency. And so this is giving elected members an opportunity voluntarily to say that they will undergo a DBS check. And this is only a basic DBS check, which looks at whether people have got any unspent convictions or conditional cautions. So it is just the basic DBS. Now, some people might then rush and say, oh, but can't we have an enhanced DBS check? Because we want to really show that we're really fit and proper and can be trusted in some sensitive situations in the community. But having looked into this, there's like 3 different levels of DBS check. There's the basic, which is what we're recommending. There's the standard, which is often done by people in sort of accountancy professions to do with finance and fraud. And then there's the enhanced DBS check. Now, we would just not be allowed as members to have the enhanced DBS check. That is purely for people who are working constantly in an environment where they're dealing with very vulnerable people and young people. So that is why, we're not just saying basic because we're cheapskate and we want the sort of lowest level. We're saying that because that's the appropriate level. And the other thing to add is that the reason it's voluntary is because legally, as I understand it, we are not able to oblige members to go through a DBS check. So just in summary and to finish off, I hope that the safeguarding policy is a very usable document and that people will engage with it, and more than that, engage with the training. And I also hope that people will support the voluntary DBS check for all members. Thanks very much.
Brilliant. Thank you so much, Councillor Elliott, and also for all the exchanges that I have seen between you and Mrs. Blake on getting this report right, in Mrs. Blake's words. So would you like to add anything, Mrs. Blake? No, everything's been said. Any questions, please? Councillor Bridgewater.
Yeah, just to clarify for this, you mentioned there were 3 different types of GBS checks, but you didn't mention the middle one. Why would the middle one not fit the standard one as opposed to the basic? That was the only question.
Thank you. I might have very briefly mentioned it and you might have missed it. So it's basically for people in the financial sector. So it's just not appropriate for us. So it would be basic or enhanced, and going through all the sort of government guidelines, you can go online to sort of see whether you can have an enhanced DBS check, and it comes out and says, no, as an elected member, you really wouldn't be able to for this role. People may have it for another role that they're part of, but not as elected members.
Councillor Edmonds, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Councillor Elliott mentioned that this draft policy is modelled on the East Devon policy, but I think there is one large difference. That theirs is a mandatory DBS requirement of members, whereas this one, I understand, is voluntary, which I welcome. I just wonder if there are any other points in their scheme, in their policy that we've amended or that may conflict perhaps with anything that, our current scheme.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer that, and then Mrs. Blake can correct me if I get anything wrong. But I think Councillor Edmonds has correctly identified that is the main difference. And clearly, this is not just meant to be a dry policy that nobody looks at. And so the most important part is Appendix A, which of course is populated with the key people within this council that we need to turn to if we've got concerns about safeguarding, either because of inappropriate behaviour within the council, but also more when we're out in the community, whether we're aware that there's somebody who's very vulnerable and a victim of abuse or neglect. And I think the other thing that's really important to say as a sort of broader point is that there's a huge amount of attention in the media on sexual abuse and on abuse. But actually, when you look at the figures from charities who support vulnerable people, it is neglect that is the real concern. That's where you've got most children. It's children who are being neglected. And so that's what we need to be aware of. Thank you.
I'd also just like to add to that, neglecting the elderly, because that is a really rising issue. And it's not all about children. It is about elderly, older, vulnerable adults. And, so we should look at that. Quite a few of them live on their own. There's nobody there or whatever. That is neglect. It might be their wish in some cases, but fundamentally they may be neglected. So they're not looking after themselves, etc. I know Councillor Renders has a question. But she's... I have to do the committee first, Councillor Goffey, so I will come to you when they've all asked their questions.
I'm confused now, because in one breath we're saying that we can't make it mandatory, and in the next breath we're saying that it's already mandatory in another council. What's the difference between us having it as mandatory and them? Sorry, just...
The difference was that they changed their their constitution, and their code of conduct. So that was at the time of an election.
Right. So we could, but we would need to change the constitution to do it. Is that what we're saying?
It may be that you wish to at the next point, and if local government reorganisation happens, it might be that you are subject to an enhanced DBS check anyway, because you will have corporate parenting responsibilities for adult and children's services.
Thank you.
Councillor Moody next, please.
Just for clarity and for those at home, that the DBS check will be, as you say, voluntary, and that the cost will be paid by the council, and it would also be associated with member training as well.
Yeah, so if I just respond to that, I think these are two completely separate things. So the training for me is the most important thing, because that's how we modify our behaviour, understand what signs to look out for in the community. That's what will make us the most responsible elected members, if you like. The DBS is really just about transparency. Yeah, the DBS check will only pick up unspent convictions and conditional cautions. So it's not a guarantee of somebody's probity. All it is saying what is in the sort of criminal record system, which is why I think we probably don't need to get too hung up on it. You're quite right about the fact that it will be voluntary, and the cost will be borne by the council, and it would be organised by the council, and it is only £21.50 per member. So it is a relatively small amount of money that we'd be spending.
I just thought it's important to raise that point. And I think the other issue is that it also reflects best practice for the council. And it demonstrates for us that our commitment as a council to safeguarding and public confidence as well.
Councillor Moody, is there a question wrapped up there?
I was just responding to the reply.
Okay, does anybody else on the hub have a question, please? Councillor Edmonds, please. Microphone, Councillor Edmonds.
The introduction of a voluntary DBS check for members, and I would certainly be volunteering for that. But I think that's just part of the requirement. I think that's got to be backed up with training, the right culture within the council. You know, safeguarding is everyone's responsibility. So I would like to see some, training on an annual basis. Again, steering clear of the word mandatory. I'm not sure we're in a position to do that. But I certainly think that there is an expectation that members should go through annual training, annual refresher training on safeguarding to make sure. And I think that would give public assurance that we are taking a responsible view in terms of, safeguarding in our important role as councillors. The mention of the Constitution...
Are we leading to the question now?
I'll leave that bit until you...
Councillor Bridgewater, please.
Yeah, I'd just like to echo what Councillor Edmonds said there. If we can have mandatory training, we already have mandatory training for planning and certain positions. So is there a possibility that we could then add to this by having mandatory training for safeguarding?
Councillor Elliott.
So it's really heartening to hear colleagues be so positive about the need for training. We have double checked and we cannot make the training mandatory. We're quite sort of restricted on what can be mandatory. But I certainly, as the safeguarding champion amongst members, will be chasing people up and certainly, as is in the detail of the paper, there is not just for newly elected members, but there is annual refresher training on safeguarding. And of course, people can always get additional advice from Mrs. Blake as well. And that's what's important, is for people to know who to turn to.
Councillor West, please.
Is it okay if I say my bit when we get to the actual discussion bit?
You can do.
Thank you.
Finally, Councillor Goffey, you may ask your question.
Well, really, I just wanted to thank Councillor Ingham and say how much I appreciate what she's done. And yes, certainly, as an ex-library volunteer doing books on wheels to the elderly, it is very important, if we are visiting constituents in their own home, that we have a DBS check for our own security as much as anything else. It's very important, and put me down for the training.
Thank you, Councillor Goffey. Councillor Daniel, is yours actually going to be a question? Good.
Thank you, Chair. So my question is about councillors' safety. And is there a process in our new safeguarding plans that councillors who experience abuse within their work as councillors to report it, and you know, somewhere that we can actually go ourselves, because it's not unheard of for councillors to be abused, as well as some of the people that we see.
Thank you very much for that question. So I can't recall how explicit that is in the policy, but of course we are all members of West Devon Borough Council. So in some ways, even if it doesn't say about our individual abuse, the whole policy applies. So, but we can always...
I would like it to be made a bit more explicit, I think, so that we feel protected also.
Yeah, and I'd like to pass over to Mrs. Blake to answer that more fully.
Within other policies within it, so this is the safeguarding policy, but there will be other ones, there'll be other policies that we do list in there, you know, certainly about lone working, health and safety at work, where some of that would be more explicit than perhaps this policy. So we'll have a look at them, make sure they are as explicit as they need to be around safety.
Because it mostly applies to our officers, and obviously it does, but we as councillors, although we're not actually employees, we are part of this council, and I feel that we should have some explicit policy that makes sure that we are protected ourselves. Thank you.
Councillor Daniel, I can answer some of that, because the Local Government Association, introduced actually by the independent group, are looking and now working with government on a paper, and you've probably seen adverts on television about civility in public life. And that is a place where you can go, as councillors in particular, to raise issues, because it is almost endemic in some councils, the abuse that councillors experience. We're very lucky where we live here that, you know, we don't really see it at all. But in other parts of the country, councillors do receive a whole heap of abuse, and it's really not very pleasant and things like that. So there is actually a government paper that is being considered, and it's, I'll get Mrs. Blake the correct title, but civility in public life comes into it, and that has been reviewed for the last few years about how to protect councillors and how we should look after ourselves, and make ourselves more aware of the vulnerability that we're placing ourselves in, and, you know, in situations. So it is a guideline, but I will get that to Mrs. Blake as soon as I can. Chief Exec, you lean forward. Would you like to say something?
No, thank you, Leader.
Okay.
Other than I think that the way Councillor Elliott has put forward this policy is excellent, and I fully support it, and I will do everything as I can as Chief Exec to support all of our members to implement it effectively. So, yeah.
Right. Would you like to propose?
I do have a serious question. It is a serious question. So, obviously, Councillor Daniels asked who. Is it you, Mrs. Blake? Are you the leading officer on this? It's for safeguarding officer.
I'm the lead safeguarding officer, but I'm not the lead for health and safety, so.
No, but what I'm saying to you is in terms of if there is a safeguarding issue, you are the person we need to
I am,
approach.
yeah.
So that's clear. Now, is that clear anywhere else?
It's on the website, on the intranet, all about, so if you put in safeguarding at the top, and we will be running off the back of the refresh of the policy. I'm going to book some more training, some dates for you guys, so that we can get you, so that you are being trained with this policy in the background as well. So yeah, but it is all there on the website as is, and we'll replace the policy as soon as it's sorted by full council.
It was a question, Chair.
I acknowledge that, but I'm also going to ask another question. Is on the boards around the building where we have the acknowledged first aiders for the building, would your safeguarding details be put up on the boards around Follerton and around Kilworthy Park as the lead officer? That's all it needs to say.
I'm sure that can be arranged.
Right, everyone. Councillor Elliott, would you like to put through your recommendations, please?
Yes, so I would like to move the recommendations as they are on the screen, and thank you for changing the wording to number 2. So it's the introduction of a voluntary DBS check. So I'm asking members to adopt our updated safeguarding policy. I'm also cheekily asking members to read it. So if I move those two recommendations.
And I am delighted to second. Right. Who would like? Oh, okay. You can go first.
I wouldn't imagine there is much debate to have since we had most of it during questions, but I will say my one bit behind this. I think this is brilliant. I think we haven't gone far enough, but that's for the future. I think as Councillor Moody said in his question, it gives the impression to the public that we are being open, we're being honest, we are transparent, I think, with your words. So yes, absolutely 100% got my backing on this one, and I would like to have seen it gone further, but I think for all the right reasons, and a brilliant paper. Well done, both of you, on this one.
Councillor Edmonds, you don't even need to put your hand up, but you can now go.
Right. Well, look, I fully support the recommendations. I'm all in favour of introducing voluntary DBS. But I have to say, supported by meaningful training, encouraging all members to participate in that. And I think we can then show that we are doing this in a responsible way, giving that assurance to members of the public and doing what we can to protect ourselves. I think that's a good balance and a good approach. I would resist any moves towards a mandatory introduction of DBS for members. I believe, and Mr. Fairbairn will correct me, I'm sure, if I'm wrong, but I think that would be illegal to impose that on members. I don't think that is necessary. So I'm fully supportive of the position that we are looking to achieve here with those recommendations.
Anybody else would like to debate where I might have stifled them in questions? Councillor West, please.
Take that look off your face. That was a good song, that was, but that's another story. Anyway, I would just say, reiterate what's gone on, and I really want to emphasise, having been DBS, enhanced DBS throughout my whole career, basically, the importance of it. And the bit of paper is important to give certainty and reassurance to people, but inevitably, it's a snapshot in time. The really, really important thing, like Councillor Renders, I feel it's not far enough. I think the training does need to be mandatory because it protects us as individuals. It shows us and gives us the knowledge to understand what is going on. We go into many complex situations that we don't necessarily understand the background to. And if we can see the signs of abuse, not sexual, but abuse, neglect, young, elderly, that sort of thing, sometimes we are in a really, really privileged position to see what's going on inside people's homes and everything else like that. So I know mandatory is for the future, but I know the biggest thing is not that certificate. It is, as members have said, around the training, and I really do feel going forward, we can't impose it, but I would hope to think that all members would attend it, not just because they have to attend it, because it also puts safeguards around them. And it makes them think about their vulnerabilities as well. We're working with the community, loan working, that sort of thing. It really helps with that whole gambit of dealing with the public going forward. I'll be quiet now. Thank you.
I'd just like to say from there that I would totally support this, as I've been asking for it for many, many years. I would hope, and I know that I will be encouraging my group to attend. I am sure Councillor Elliott will be on everybody's tail, and I'm sure Councillor Jury will do the same with his group, to strongly encourage, as I've had whispered in my ear by somebody, to use those words, to attend the training. And I believe we're also due some other training on neurodiversity, etc. I think that's also, I've been asking for, and that's Mr. Hawke. So if we could, Mr. Molyneux was listening.
I wasn't, leader.
I know. We were just saying that Mr. Hawke has been due to give training on neurodiversity, equalities and things like that, and we haven't had that, and I've been asking for that for a number of years. So I think, you know, it is important because it helps us recognise, but also protects us as councillors. So I think we've agreed, well done everyone. I think you have 10 members signed up today already that are in the room, so we've just got to work on the other 21. So thank you both very much. Oh yeah, we'll do that. So thanks, Jane. So all those in favour, please show.
That is unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
I think we would like to just again thank you both, because it has been an extensive piece of work, and I know that you've looked at varying councils' policies, because I've seen other names come up in the email correspondence, so I know how much work's gone into it. So thank you both. Right, if we could move on now to item 12. And we have the West Devon Tree, Woodland and Hedge Plan. And we have hello, Mr. Marshall. Haven't seen you for a while at a council meeting. You're looking after the trees, yeah, I know. And hello, Mr. Sakula. Yeah, you have dragged him in. And for those online, Mr. Sakula is the Principal Natural Resources and Green Spaces Officer, and Mr. Lee Marshall is the Principal Tree Officer for this authority. So, Councillor West, off you go.
I just thought I'd bring the heavy mob in just in case there were any issues or whatever. Thank you, members, and thank you for Rob and Lee for coming in. I'm sure Lee's got enough to do at the moment with the various storms that are going on, etc. This basically is asking for the adoption of the West Devon Tree, Woodland and Hedge Plan for 2026 through to 2029. It's basically drawn together a number of plans and policies into one coherent plan for members and the public to have a clear understanding of the aspirations of the council going forward, as well as the workings of the council in terms of dealing with issues around trees, the expansion of trees, and the maintaining of them within the authority. This meets very much action around the council delivering and identifying opportunities for tree planting and biodiversity, with resources being allocated through the earmarked reserves fund. The plan itself is really clear, it's straightforward, and I think Rob has done, along with others, a great job in pulling together all the different parts we've got around TPOs, what our aspirations are. We've also got in the background, of course, around the needs from the Environmental Act around increasing our percentage of trees from 13% to 16.5% in the area by 2050. We've also got, obviously, the, I've got to get the term right, is it the Plymouth and South West Devon or South West and Plymouth?
Plymouth and South Devon
community forest, which is one of 3 across the country, is it something like
Slightly more, I think, might be in double figures.
Might be in double
one of the
figures.
newest.
One of the newest ones within that. And really, the idea of the plan is to show how we're going to maintain the current levels of resourcing the supporting the tree protection and care, increasing the cover from 13% to 16.5%, which equates to a 25% increase in woodland cover from the existing levels by 2050, and how we'll work with partners to engage, inspire and support local communities to protect, improve and expand trees, woodlands and hedges. So it's not for us as a council to provide all these trees, it's about working in partnership with other communities like the Tamar Valley National Landscape, Dartmoor National Park and the Plymouth and South Devon Community Forest. So I recommend this to members. Anything else from the team to say, really?
I think you've summed it up very well, really. The document does several things. It sets out our role in partnership in terms of woodland creation. So just within the last week, you've probably seen some of the same press releases I have, but Forestry England, for example, are planning about 200 hectares of woodland within West Devon. One near Hatherley, one near Campton. So it's partnership approach. There's big planting going on through the likes of Forestry England, who are the government's forestry department. Then through the community forest, we're sort of getting close, I think, now to 100 hectares of planting within West Devon. So there's lots of different approaches going on. The national park will have their own schemes. What we're doing is playing our part in that quite complicated picture, but everyone's pulling in the same direction. But also what this plan does is articulates, I think, the quite strong position we're now in terms of asset tree management. So again, just within the last week, we were written to by the DEFRA Minister, reminding us about the National Tree Safety Guidance and suggesting that local councils might want to get their house in order. Thankfully, we have. So we've invested within the assets team in an arboricultural officer. We have the software sitting behind him that he can record our assets trees and then show a regime of inspection should the worst ever happen. So we've got ourselves into a strong position on several aspects. Lee will be able to talk in terms of development management, which is his speciality. But I think this document pulls all of that together, draws a line in the sand, puts out quite a clear picture to the community and our residents of exactly where we're at as an authority, which I think is hopefully a fairly strong position currently.
And if I could, Rob seems to be hitting the heavy hitter of catching and increasing the woodland cover, which I thoroughly support. I go down more of a niche avenue, but I believe equally as important in securing the benefits of our veteran and aged trees. I work with the Woodland Trust on a project supported by a chief executive where I'm trying to raise the profile and have more of them recorded, and then I will protect those that I consider to be at risk. We've shook ourselves down as an authority. What Rob was mentioning, we now know what we own, and we've looked at what we own in terms of our most valuable aged trees, and we will be promoting them. I have a meeting on Monday with the senior press officer for the Woodland Trust to progress the work I'm doing. And building on that, one of the aspirations and targets of the document that I will be giving my energy to is to increase the tree warden network in the West Devon. It's a fantastic asset in the South Hams, as I'm sure you're all aware. And I'll be giving that my energy to support not only my interest in the aged and veteran trees, but my work in the planning department, because it just brings a nice local balance to what can be tricky sometimes to hold the position. So, it brings all the threads of arboriculture together, and it's quite timely as well. As you know, the MPPF's been looked at again, and I have some concerns that trees may slip down the agenda of it under land pressure. So I'm also the chairman of the Devon and Cornwall Tree Officer Group, and I've set up a subgroup to interrogate the MPPF, and we're going to be producing a consultation backed hopefully by member support of this document. So thank you.
Thank you. I just say, obviously, for us with the joint local plan going forward in that, this obviously will have impacts around in terms of building and plans going on and the importance of providing trees and woodlands within new residential areas. And part of the plan will help us sort of support that going forward, so as it goes. Thank you, Chair.
A quick question, probably on behalf of Councillor Sellis, actually more than anyone. When can we put into the document, because I confess I've not read every single word, but I do like particularly page 8 where it sets out members, officers, etc., the different criterion. But will we have in there that the planting on new housing estates is all native species? Because I see Mr. Sakula's smiling, he's used to that one. Ah, did you? Yeah, she's not even here and I've done it.
Thank you for the question. It's the councillor Sellis has contacted me directly about that. I don't think, in all honesty, we could say that 100% of the time because we are in a changing climatic situation and different trees are now moving across. When I was tall base tree officer, I planted olive trees and they fruited and they're still fruiting. So we are in a change. Well, I think there's certainly wording there that wherever suitable, and we would definitely promote the benefits of native trees wherever possible. We would have to drill down into that because obviously, yes, we want native trees, but we do have to be alive to the effects of climate change.
Another one question is, are you aware of the housing estate that's 120 trees short?
No. Which?
I went with enforcement officers, I'll tell you about it later. Councillor Jury, please.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a question really because I'm quite intrigued by the numbers. I'm just seeking a bit of insight. So the Environment Act, as I understand it, starts from a base point that the tree cover over the whole of the UK is 14.5%, and it wants to increase it to 16.5%. We're quoting, obviously, in this document that the tree cover in West Devon, very rural area, is 13%. And I'm assuming that's partly because a big chunk is taken up by Dartmoor, which doesn't have a lot of forestation other than in the Forestry Commission sites, and quite a lot of the rest is farmland. So with the pressures that we have on our available space from Dartmoor, which would presumably need some cooperation with the National Park, and the pressures on our existing little corridor of land that we can develop on from the NPPF, and the need to keep productive farmland in production, the increase from 13% to 16.5% actually is huge. Although it's 2.5%, it's a huge increase in what we've got. Can that be achieved, do you think, within the constraints that we have?
I think yes. I think there's plenty of land available. Whether it can be achieved in terms of the scale of planting and the speed of planting that is being aspired to is another matter. But yes, I think there's plenty of land around. I haven't got it to hand, and I don't reference it in this document. But I think last year there was a review by government of the available land and effectively how farming land could be tweaked to accommodate trees within the context of the farm without having any impact on the amount of food that could be produced within the same amount of land if you used it more efficiently. So there have been a lot of studies, and they said, I think, effectively there was a heck of a lot of slack. So yes, there was plentiful land. I think the thing to reinforce as well is both the Tamar Valley National Landscape and Dartmoor National Park have exactly the same figures to increase the amount of land cover under trees by 3% as well. So the targets are pretty consistent regardless.
If I could just come in there as well, Councillor Jury, if you've been to Buckland Abbey recently, you will know that they've been doing a lot of planting of trees, and the way they've done it is within the borders of the margins of the fields. So effectively what they're doing is using that less productive land within it. So yes, obviously there's going to be some inroads, but it's about being sympathetic to the surrounding environment of that. And it's about maximising the both and getting that balance right. Like you, when I saw the figures, I said to you, Robert, how much? And then we had the conversation around that. And I think, as Councillor Varney would say, there's lots of room on the moor potentially for some more tree planting or whatever, depending on that land use there. And actually that fits in very nicely with the final item on it around landscape regeneration, that sort of thing. Thank you.
Does anyone else have any more questions? Councillor Daniel, is that you? I've been expecting one from you, but I've not seen the hand go up.
I was wanting to ask about hedgerow protection, because that's something that really concerns me when I'm driving around West Devon. Is the way our hedges are managed is just disgraceful, quite honestly. And after all, they are trees. They're made of trees, small trees. And, you know, we don't need necessarily to plant lots more trees, but just make use of the ones we've got and allow them to grow instead of smashing them down, which is what happens. And what protections are there for hedgerows in place? And is there anything that we can do, particularly, and also to encourage people to plant more hedgerows rather than fences and walls?
Yeah, so in terms of protection, there are the hedgerow regulations. As you know, a farmer can manage his hedgerow, and up until they actually destroy it, it isn't an offence. It isn't an offence, so they can recoppice trees of a very large size. How I control it when I either have preemptive wind of it or mid activity, I report them to the Forestry Commission, because there's only a certain amount of timber. So once we're talking about trees, if the large amount of trees in a hedgerow gets felled, it breaches an exemption under the Forestry Act. I have really good relationships with all the forestry officers, and they do attend. We are investigating one in the South Hams where a farmer discovered a friend with a big pair of shears and he caused chaos, but he has breached it. So preemptively, I mean, we do have the TPO mechanism, but that's really only for trees of like amenity value that are in more of our denser populated areas. So yeah, the Hedgerow Act, and when it conflicts with the Forestry Commission, that's probably the only mechanism I've got there.
Because actually, I think, you know, we're missing a huge boost to the environment if we allow our hedges to grow bigger and don't smash them down every year. Because I think, you know, that they're a missing link really in our environment or our environmental policies.
I'd just like to ask something from there. When you see hedgerows that have been flailed and literally young trees ripped apart, but also my other favourite subject is they cause flooding because they don't have to clear up behind them. So all of the branches, twigs and everything that have come down end up blocking the culverts and the drains, and that's where we get most of our flooding from. And I think there should be a responsibility, a duty to actually, if you have been flailing, to actually have something going behind you that's picking up what you're leaving behind, because I am sure that is one of the biggest contributors to flooding in rural areas.
Daniels.
Yeah, I mean, just in general terms, in terms of hedgerow management, so in the South Hams we did work with the Tree Warden Network to produce a leaflet which has been quite widely circulated in terms of good and responsible management of hedgerows. So we can quite easily replicate that in West Devon. We have informally brought some copies over, but we could try and formalise that. A lot of good work goes on through the Tamar Valley National Landscape and the National Park in terms of engagement with farmers. So whilst we might not do it directly ourselves, I think some of our partners are undertaking that sort of activity. In terms of the community forest, then they do fund hedgerow creation. So yeah, that's certainly a means of facilitating new hedgerow creation if there are opportunities. The community forest would very much welcome that because I think in terms of wildlife contribution, it's huge from a healthy hedgerow.
I think we were still on questions, weren't we, Mr. White? Yeah, I'm a bit lost now. Right, Councillor West, would you like to put forward your recommendations, please? Phone, please.
Propose that the Hub Committee agrees to adopt the West Devon Tree Woodland and Hedge Plan 26-29 as set out in the Appendix 1, and that they delegate authority to the Director of Strategy and Governance in consultation with the lead Hub Committee member for Climate and Biodiversity to make any minor periodic updates required to the plan. That's a mouthful.
And just for everybody's knowledge, The officer is Mr. Powell. I'm really sorry, I forgot your surname for a moment, and I didn't want to call you Drew straight away. I'm sorry, Mr. Powell. So yes, that is his new title. First time I've seen it up in lights. So everybody knows who we're delegating to. Right, does anybody have any? Oh, I need to second it. Yes, thank you. I will do that. Right, any debate, please? Councillor Moody.
Thank you, Chair. I'd just like to thank the officers and Chris for the report. And could I ask a question in debate? Is Rob, Chris and Lee, are they the tree fellers?
Councillor Elliott, please.
Thank you. So, yes, I think this is a really impressive piece of work, and it's fantastic to bring everything together into one plan or strategy in this way. But the other point I would make is on page 8, it does very clearly sort of set out who is this plan for, and it is for a lot of very disparate groups because it's for residents and councillors and officers. And so I think, you know, the next stages of work, it would be really good to think about where West Devon are best placed in terms of all the different partners that you were talking about. What is our unique contribution to this? And so that we really fulfil our potential. And one of the things that it's wonderful to hear about the tree warden network that you've got operating in South Hams. That seems like a very good idea. And one thing that we have, the sort of competitive advantage, is that we've got everybody's addresses that we write to and say, can we have your council tax, please? So in terms of our communications with our residents, I'd really like to see a sort of follow-on piece of work here at some point to, how do we play our part? Because I think, there were questions I had that you very well answered, Mr. Tsoukalos. We don't have lots of land, so we don't have a huge team to go and actually plant the trees. It's got to be partnership working, but let's really fulfil our part of that.
Great suggestion. What I could throw in, I suppose, is the work that Tracy Webb does. So Tracy coordinates the Wildlife Warden scheme. I understand she's up near 1,000 now in terms of her circulation for the newsletter, and notwithstanding you're probably preaching to the converted, nonetheless it has a good reach. So we could look into amplifying messages through the newsletter as a starter, perhaps.
If I could just also comment on that, with the Wildlife Warden scheme, it's developing. We've got training coming up in March and in the autumn, and there'll be opportunities there to raise the whole issue about hedgerows and that sort of thing and looking after them. And they may well be able to advertise the tree warden scheme. I mean, I know my own son's very keen to get involved with it, so there will be opportunities there to raise awareness and that within those people that are keen to get involved in that anyway. But I set the point we can widen it afield. What can you do? That sort of thing. Thank you.
And I should have said this earlier on, in terms of land availability, I was involved in the scheme in Torbay, and we remodelled a major junction and there was no room for public trees, so I set up, I acquired some money and I set up a scheme where we donated trees, and I invited residents with big front gardens and said, do you want a tree? And I got 76 trees in a very dense urban area, and they're all thriving and doing well if they survive the storm, but that may be something we could consider.
Just from the point that was raised by Councillor Elliott, with the newsletter that goes out with the Wildlife Warden, could it merge and be a tree one as well? Because most people who are interested in the Wildlife Warden scheme are going to be interested in trees because of the natural habitat for our bugs and insects and everything else. So I wonder if it could slightly merge and actually then reach all those disparate groups that we're talking about and humans.
So you're suggesting tree, woodland heritage and nature wardens? We'll have to sort it. I'll ask Mr. Powell to perhaps.
I think that's an operational issue, and Mr. Powell can take on board the comments. Does anybody else have anything to add to debate? No? Okay. All those in favour, please.
That's unanimous. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Now we've reached the final item, and I think you're going to sit still, aren't you, Mr. Sekula? So we are on item 13, which is Devon Local Nature Recovery Strategy. The lead member is Councillor West, and Mr. Sekula is the lead officer.
Thank you, Chair. This really is for us to, I think the phrase is sign off in terms of this. Our responsibility for this is limited. It's just that we're one of the partners working with Devon County Council on this. And really, it is our role to endorse the Devon Local Nature Recovery Strategy. Why do I always get the long names? Anyway, and then to delegate again to Mr. Powell in terms of the confirmation that we are content to go in with it. I think for me, which brings in Councillor Jury's point from before, when we're talking about increasing by 3.5% the amount of woodland, hedgerow, etc. within West Devon, it is important, but again, it's about identifying the best opportunities for that to take place. And I think this really is primarily what the purpose of this, the Devon Local Nature Reserves Recovery Strategy is. So it's basically a mapping tool which allows people to look at what we've got, look at the ownership, look at what's there and see where the opportunities are for actually in improvements within nature recovery. So I'd recommend it to colleagues in the sense that it gives us a structure in which we can talk to. It gives us a toolkit, if you like, or a tool to enable us to actually have the conversations about where the best place for certain activities are, etc. I think it also helps protect farmland and other land which may be productive agriculturally, because there's that what we will have with this is the ability to drill down and see what's there and see and have the conversation about what the best use for that land is. So I recommend that we go ahead and are content for this to go ahead. I don't know if Mr. Sekula would like to say anything else at that point.
Just a tiny bit, really. Great summary. We clearly have a role as a supporting authority, so Devon County have undoubtedly done the lion's share of the work on this as the responsible authority. I think it's a useful document for us as a local authority, and we'll have read across to forward planning and development management. But more than that, it's a document for all sorts of other sectors. So the farming sector was just mentioned. Undoubtedly, this will guide the opportunities for farmers in terms of accessing grants in due course, in terms of what habitat makes sense where. Funnily enough, this will probably dictate where trees shouldn't go as much as it will dictate where trees should go and make sense. So it will be useful to communities in terms of maybe guiding funding applications that they might want to make. So it's a useful document for us, but we're just one of many on this, really. It is a document for Devon more widely, and I think it will be used by quite a lot of different sectors.
Thank you. Does anyone have any questions, please? No? Would you like to move the recommendation, please?
Thank you, Chair. I recommend then that the Hub Committee endorses the Devon Local Nature Recovery Strategy for publication, and that are prepared to delegate to the Director of Strategy and Governance the final confirmation that the councils are content for the strategy to be published.
I think Mr. Powell's new job title is slightly difficult to say out loud, isn't it?
It is.
Oh, is it indeed? Right. Any debate from anybody? Councillor Elliott, please.
Really just to say how much I endorse this, but once again, this is clearly a fabulous resource and can be used by a number of different people. We're so lucky in West Devon that we live where we do, and although we're trying to recover nature, we are already surrounded by more nature than a lot of people. So for me, again, it is how do we get the message out there? I mean, it's really great in the documents in front of us that there's so many screenshots. You can see what a practical resource this is at quite a micro level. So I'm going to go home and tell my friends and family about it, but it would be nice for it to go a bit beyond that, for other people to know about it. So I'd love to see a bit of a comms strategy or how we weave it in to the other things that we're doing. Thank you.
If I could just comment on that, it's very interesting. I've been to parish council meetings and I've talked about biodiversity and that, and they literally sit there and laugh at me saying, well, we live on Dartmoor. it's biodiverse. Now, most of us know that actually it's not in many respects. And if Councillor Viney was here, she could wax lyrical on why it isn't biodiverse. So I think actually this is a good tool to be able to explain that to people, understand what is going on, and a little bit more about what biodiversity is and what the opportunities are. So I think it's a very valid point. We do need to communicate about this to raise awareness. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? No? If we could move to the vote then, please. All those in favour?
That's unanimous for both. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank everybody for this meeting. It has been one of the most productive hub meetings we've had for ages. We have agreed some really good things today. We've heard good news with our finances and how they're managed. We've done the awful job of having to do the council tax. But not only that, with the safeguarding policy and, the new business rates policies we're going to have to introduce. And then finally, two really good policies that we agree with, fundamentally, all of us in this room and all 31 councillors, about, looking after our woodland and hedges and local nature recovery, etc., that we all agree with. So actually today has been a really productive meeting. I'd like to thank you all for your contributions into debate, and thank you all very much indeed. Thank you.